Hi, I'm Alix Pruett, and welcome to Sexient Beings. I'm a certified sex, love, and relationship coach guide. I work with men, women, and couples who want to move out of their old toxic patterns, traumas, and beliefs to create relationships from a place of deep connection, pleasure, and fulfillment, whether with themselves or others. And today we're joined by Rachelrose. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I need to come up with a phenomenal one just like yours, but I am Rachel Rose. I work with women to help them reclaim the sense of self after narcissistic or domestic abuse.
Beautiful. And as always, glad to have you back in this space. And
Yes, thank you for having me.
yeah, let's see. So our topic today, which you chose, was heartbreak. Do you want to talk a little bit on that just to get everyone up to speed on what that looks like for you for the topic today?
Yeah, it was actually the interesting topic for me to want to do because I was doing a RIM session with my mentor
Hmm.
slash life coach therapist person, and their advice really stuck with me about, they were asking me what I was feeling, and I was like, I'm feeling heartbreak. And a lot of the time heartbreak is associated with, the loss of a relationship, usually with a romantic partner.
Hmm.
And my therapist pointed out that, like, what's so scary about heartbreak? Heartbreak's been your friend your entire life. Like there's nothing really new to experience. You've survived before, have you not? And that's a very nonchalant approach to my feelings of heartbreak that made a lot of sense because my feelings of heartbreak in that moment weren't specifically only about a romantic partner or
Yeah.
past partners. And it, like, him saying that, like, I had like flashbacks of like the first time I felt heartbreak in the sandbox, like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Someone stole my toy, like that was heartbreak. And there's the different levels of heartbreak that you can feel from different relationships. And I started doing a bunch of research last week on that as well, on like heartbreak syndrome,
Hmm.
which is rare, but like feelings of heartbreak can literally kill you.
Yeah.
And I'm just so curious about it now after, my therapist's advice. It's like, so can we change the relationship we have with heartbreak? Can we make that one that is progressive,
Yeah.
that,
I
that
mean,
helps move us? Yeah.
I would imagine we could. That's
Mm-hmm.
like most of the emotions or any of
Mm-hmm.
the emotions I've come across so far, I haven't specifically looked at heartbreak as an emotion on its own, but it
Mm-hmm.
definitely is. But all of them carry really valuable pieces of information,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like they're wanting to be your friend, they're wanting to serve you, they're wanting to protect you
Yeah.
in ways. It's just like it's coming to that core of it, moving through those emotions and
Mm-hmm.
being more present with them at more nuanced levels so you can pick those up earlier. Like you haven't repressed them, so now when they come out, it's not this huge overwhelming explosion
Mm-hmm.
of the emotion, right? And that's like you were saying, for you it came up in this room session with your coach. And as I was like thinking on this topic, I was like, okay, well, like, how can heartbreak show up? And yes, like the most profound instances I can think of, at least probably since high school. Actually, that's not accurate either now that I start thinking about it. But it's partnered relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's that space where it like it feels like, or for me, it feels like I can't breathe. It feels like my heart just shattered into a million pieces and like is never going to be put back in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
right? As I was even just saying that, I was like, oh, partnered relationships. Oh, when my dog Stitch died, that was a huge heartbreak,
Yeah.
right? He was my first dog. All I had ever wanted the entire time I was a little kid was a dog. And then he passed away, but on top of that, he passed away early. Like
Mm.
he was still
Mm-hmm.
relatively young.
Yeah.
But as I thought about it, I was like, well, no, like if you lose a toy as a kid, like and that's your favorite toy,
Yeah.
right? Or um yeah, it's those feelings of loss of and it's that loss that it's like this will never be here in the same way or it's
Mm-hmm.
gone for good. Like that's when I think of heartbreak, that's what comes up.
Yeah, yeah. What you just made me think would be like loss of something or someone specifically that you love unconditionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't think it's just that unconditional piece of loving them though. There's something I feel like
Hmm.
you get in that relationship that probably feels like unconditional love because even
That
if I
makes sense.
reflect back to that relationship with that dog, that was the first time I can think of that one like he was actually the first person I can think of that I could cry in front of, right? And he would like he'd
Oh,
come up and cuddle next to me and like there was only one time I can think of and I was like totally understandable, dude. It was the movie Hachi and I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but
no.
it's about a dog and this it's supposed to be based on a true story. I think that happened in Japan. Not 100% sure of the location, but the dog's owner, like the dog would walk his owner to the train station every day. Well, one day the owner never comes home, but the dog keeps going to that train station. And the family, like the guy's wife and kids and stuff, they cannot get him to stay away from the train station, right? And he keeps going back, keeps going back. I think the kids in the movie adopt him and move him to a completely different city at some point, and he still finds his way back to that train station. And so through this entire movie, I'm sobbing because you know the guy's
Yeah.
never coming back, but this dog is still holding on to that hope that he's gonna show up there. And it ends
Hmm.
up being the like no, I'm sorry for spoilers, but in that, like, the dog passes away and this is how he spent his life. But it's,
Waiting.
yeah,
Hmm.
that waiting to have that connection again. But I sobbed through that entire movie and my dog, like, at some point very early on, he like looked at me, looked at the TV screen, looked back at me, and he left the room. And I was just like, you're not gonna cuddle me? Okay. But every other instance, like I could cry openly in front of him, right? Like he he would actually get aggressive over me, not with everybody, but with certain people that he deemed unsafe. Or like certain people would approach my car. He would growl at them. And it was the
Mm.
first place outside myself since I was a much younger child that I had felt protected, right? There were these key things that I received in that relationship that I hadn't received anywhere else in
Hmm.
so long.
Yeah.
And so like when that left, it felt like it was this thing that like could never be fulfilled again in this relationship with that dog.
Hmm. So do you, in, I mean, in that instance, do you feel like there is a way that to view that heartbreak
I mean,
so that
even
it's
as,
not so daunting for the the way that like I'm thinking about it is you know that is a painful thing to
hmm
go through, so then
oh, yeah,
we always protect ourselves from pain in the future.
yeah,
And so a lot of time when you experience heartbreak or things like that, you don't you're not as adventurous in life anymore. You're more timid and
yeah.
cautious, and you don't want that feeling to come back because it was so powerful.
hmm
Do you think that there is a way around that?
I do. And even as I was talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
it started to become more clear to me, right?
Perfect.
Because I've
Yeah.
I've had this um, program brewing in my system and percolating and like coming
Mm.
out, and it's this idea of coming home, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's this space where we put these parts of ourself, so like that my dog would protect me, that this dog like could be there with me while I cried, because I wasn't even there with myself when I cried, right?
Ah, yeah.
um that that I did get to receive this like unconditional love from him. Those things, like, there's something I put into this other being external to myself. And ultimately, like, yes, he did help provide me with those things. He helped me see that I was worthy of having those things, even if it was from a dog. Like, it showed me that it was okay to have those places and I was worth that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But part of my journey since that point in time has been coming to that place of fulfilling those within myself. Because when I'm projecting that need onto somebody else, something else, like, it can end up pushing them away
Right.
because it becomes a lot of pressure, a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility for somebody else to do for me. I can still enjoy those things and receive those things from relationships, but
Mm-hmm.
it's no longer a need from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to notice the nuanced spaces. And I think that that's probably, to me, at this point in looking at the idea of heartbreak, it's where we've like put this proverbial home into other people.
And
And
then
that
that gets
signal,
taken away.
yeah, and then it feels like a chunk of our home is being taken away from us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
that, to me, that beautiful signal, that beautiful message out of that is like, okay, well, what was it you received from that space, from that connection,
Mm-hmm.
that you're needing to bring to your own system as well, and like finding that healing path.
Mm-hmm. It kind of transforms heartbreak into like a teacher
Hmm. Yeah,
for, you know, you to learn things and then take that with you moving forward.
yeah,
And then through that develops emotional intelligences to protect that home, and you don't fall into that pit of, you know, like, I'm not willing to go out and be adventurous anymore because I don't want to feel that heartbreak. But you've listened
hmm
to the lessons that were given from that particular instance of heartbreak, whatever it may have been. And you've listened, you've heard, you've felt, you grieved, whatever it was you needed to do. And now you get to take that with you.
yeah,
And it's a almost like heartbreak. Learning from heartbreak gives you the courage to be willing to be heartbroken again.
yeah, exactly. Because that's,
Yes.
it's one of those spaces that feels so painful and
Mm-hmm.
so devastating. But
Yeah.
one of the biggest things I've found through all the work I've done and working with clients is usually the things that feel the biggest and the scariest and the darkest and like the thing you
Mm-hmm.
really don't want to see and look at. Like, once you bring that light to them, they are some of the most beautiful aspects of life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because it's you can go through the death of somebody else, right? And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. Like it doesn't have to be something that feels really painful in our system. And that's
Mhm.
my another dog I have right now, Kizu. She's 10. I've been noticing she's getting like lumps and bumps like on her body. She's not as young as she used to be. Like there's that side knowledge like in not too far future, not like I don't think she's gonna live to be like 20 years old or anything like that, but she will pass away, right? And
Mhm.
there's a part of me that starts to well up because of the remembrance of how it felt to lose the other two boy dogs I've had and how devastating that felt in my system
Mhm.
and that space of like just earth-shattering heartbreak. But with
Yeah.
her, there's this stronger desire in me to be at that place of calm and peace about it and
Mhm.
have that be a celebration for her moving on to whatever is after this,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Versus me getting wrapped up about me being heartbroken. That doesn't mean I can't cry, right? It doesn't mean there's not going to be sadness there, but it doesn't have to be my world is destroyed.
Yes. Yeah. That can I can be a thing even before the death. What literal or metaphysical, maybe
Mm-hmm.
is it, especially in the women that I work with. A lot of them are going through heartbreak and that loss before the relationship is even ended.
Yeah. Well, and I figure
And
that
so,
related a bit back to the grieving and relationships
yeah,
episode
yes,
we did.
that's what it was called. I was talking about this earlier. I could not for the life of me remember what the topic of that discussion was. But grieving
Yeah.
and relationships. Yes. Yeah. And a lot of that, it's kind of interconnected in some ways with heartbreak. Is in many ways there's a romanticization of that
Mm-hmm.
grieving process in heartbreak. Like I remember, my a cat of mine passed away recently, and we didn't have him for very long. We had adopted him, but that doesn't mean I didn't love him deeply, and the loss was difficult. But he was also very old, and like you mentioned, like in past passings of animals, like I've been gutted, like it was
Mm-hmm.
not okay and heartbroken. And I was very heartbroken in this instance. And part of me felt guilty at the fact that I wasn't as heartbroken as
Yeah.
other pets. And another part of me was like, I need to be upset. I need to be feeling this way. I need to like
Mm-hmm.
romanticize it in some way. Um, so that makes me believe that like it masks all the different like ways of looking at heartbreak, of how heartbreak can present itself. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to just be tears and sadness.
Well, and I think there can be a lot of shame around certain types of loss and
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
different grieving processes we have. And I think I brought it up in the grieving and relationships session as well. Um, but like when I was a little kid and even through high school and stuff like that, I have had, I mean, as many people will in their lifetimes, but many people in my life die. Like I remember like both my grandpas dying when I was little and like I I wasn't wrecked about it. Like my mom was sad. I remember that, but like I don't even remember crying over them passing. I definitely cried over animals passing, but it was a much shorter process than I experienced later on with my dogs passing. But then even like into my early 20s, I had a friend who she had been one of my best friends in high school and she ended up passing away, but I don't even think I cried at that point, and it wasn't because like I felt like some deep need to cry that I was repressing. It was just kind of like she was off on whatever her adventures were again because she had gone and decided to go hitchhiking for several years after high school. But most of the people I knew that had also been friends with her were just wrecked and sobby messes, and like
Mm-hmm.
they needed all this space to commemorate her. They needed all this space to like talk about their sadness, their grief, their anger, their all the things coming up, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But I remember being like, is there something wrong with me? So there was a layer of shame
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't processing through that grief the same way other people were,
Yeah.
right? Or like my mom will get really wrapped up in the news. I feel like that's also come up in a conversation we've had. And she'll get so wrecked and devastated about these other instances happening in the world that don't directly impact her. And like, that's okay. It's okay to be sad about those things. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how much are you letting these things that don't directly have an impact on you overtake in your life as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like she'll look at me and be like, "Oh, this scary thing happened in the news today." And I'm like, how does that really affect me? Like, yeah, it's good to have awareness. Like, thank you for sharing that. But I'll notice this like feeling that like I should be feeling more depth and like passion or anger, whatever it is about it, and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's to me there's that layer of shame that like grief has to look
A
certain
certain
ways.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, heartbreak is either way, like this may sound crude, I guess. It doesn't really affect anything either. Like
Yeah.
it 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 it's just an emotional like ice cream scoop.
Hmm.
Like we're just getting that scoop, out of our chest.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. But if you take away the emotional hurt and whatnot, it doesn't change all that much. I mean, certain aspects of your life may change if this person was consistent in it.
Hmm.
Um, if you have to like move, but once that transition is finalized, nothing's really different. It's still the same
Well,
grind. It's
and
just learned.
there was a point in time where that person probably wasn't even a part of your life. Like unless
Yeah,
they were like your childhood best friend and have literally been there for like decades, right?
right. Or
Which
like
is
a
the
sibling.
yeah, the space where I've heard of what I think you're considering heartbreak syndrome. Not 100% sure what you were looking into, but like there
Oh,
there
yeah.
has been that correlation found that like couples who are together for like 50, 60
Yeah,
years
yeah,
and in old
yeah.
age, like where one passes away and then usually within a year or so there's a higher ratio
Hmm. Yeah,
of
yeah.
the other partner passing.
Yeah, it is most common in like older
Hmm.
couples of like 60 years and parents of children who pass.
Yeah.
It's very rare though,
Yeah.
but it is. We are capable of it, and it's
I mean, it
just
makes sense. There's so much when you've spent that much time, right,
hmm
with another single person, at least in the instance of older couples.
hmm
Um, there's so much of your identity that gets wrapped up
hmm
around that person being there.
yeah. And my grandmother passed away from heartbreak syndrome.
Mhm.
Her partner passed, and it was a couple of days later. She basically just said like, "No, I'm ready to go."
Yeah.
She was in her 90s,
Mm-hmm.
but it was uh, very interesting to bear witness to, is
Yeah.
to witness someone's heartbreak that was so deep that they no longer wanted to exist in the world. And I saw how that affected my mom as well. It's like her heartbreak was going to happen from her loss,
Mm-hmm.
but in I guess many ways you could say, um, my grandmother's last act was in her own self interest and wasn't really thinking about the other people who were going to grieve her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's okay too. And
Yeah.
some instances of heartbreak, like you're gonna need to be a little bit selfish in what you need to do that's best for you and your healing process to get that lesson to be able to move on, so
Yeah.
that it isn't something that keeps you from leaping in the future, or like from certain aspirations that you could have wanted to do, but something that this person or thing brought into your life is now a reminder or something like that. And like you mentioned, at some point in our lives, they weren't even a part of it.
Yeah.
I have not been able to have a childhood friend like that, so I'm not entirely sure what that pain would feel like. Um,
I've been watching a lot of anime recently,
mhm.
and a lot of that'll like I always think of, or I keep seeing images in my head of like two little like Japanese school kids like running to school together and like going to middle school together and going to high school together, and then they fall in love, and like that's the like flashes of images I'm getting.
It makes me think of Up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
like
kind of like that.
the whole first part of the movie
Mm-hmm.
is like since they were little kids, and he was just like, yeah, no, I'm gonna just love you forever. And
Yeah.
then I don't want to be a spoiler, but I'm pretty sure everyone's seen Up.
And well, and that's at the very beginning of the movie as
Yeah,
well.
it's like the
Like
first like 5 minutes. Leave it to Pixar to make you cry in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like that was
Pixar movies
heartbreaking.
are phenomenal at that. They have a long-standing history of there is some earth-shattering moment, right?
Yeah,
Also, general hero's journey aspects. But yeah, it's that space where once again, so much of the identity and like as we were talking, I realized especially with the link of parents, but I can also see it with relationships to partners as well. It's so much of what you find as your purpose
yeah.
can get wrapped up
In
in
another,
that other being, right? And that,
yeah.
I mean, that's in being a parent. Like, I can understand that. I've definitely tried to create the space and not like on a conscious method um, with my son that like when they very first start out, like when they are born out of your body, I guess even when they're in your body as the mother, these little beings are 100% dependent on you for their
Hmm.
survival.
Hmm.
That has to become your purpose, right? It
Yeah,
has to
yeah.
become somebody's purpose. Like if you this little being were to get left alone in the woods, it's not surviving.
Right.
Um, but in that, one of the things that was really beautiful that I heard very, very early on, what and like in my adventures in being a parent, was this definition of what it meant to be a parent. And it explained that this little being 100% dependent on you. And it's this process as they grow of them slowly moving away from you and you slowly letting go.
Hmm.
And so, even at points when Max was very young and I was having a hard time because I was going off of 4 hours of sleep that was broken up every night, and he was crying, and I was trying to soothe him, and I would just break down crying as well. Um, I ended up like sitting down and doing parts work with myself one night when he was doing this and like talking to this part of me that was so upset and like felt like I couldn't do this thing, and it ended up coming back to this calm place of being like, this isn't gonna last forever. Like there is going, like right now he needs to be on you as much as possible, right? There could be a point in the future where he don't want to touch you at all or maybe ever again. So
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it now.
Yeah.
And with that, like honestly, from that moment on, like there's been other points in time where there's been these flares in my system again because I haven't been doing self-care in the ways to like give myself space I'm needing. But it made it so much easier when I actually sat down and had that talk within my own system
Mm-hmm.
to resource. And because there's many parents who end up, they hit the point their kids want their independence. They don't want to cuddle them. They don't want to hold them. They don't want hugs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's devastating for the parents because somehow they didn't see it coming. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
like, you were a teenager once. Did you want to cuddle with your parents then? Maybe they did. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
that's like a willful ignorance that I think that a lot of people develop unconsciously.
yeah.
And that happens, definitely in the like, and empty nest syndromes that you're talking about here. But I think that also happens in all dynamics of relationships. Is
Yeah.
we block out certain things that we know are inevitable from common sense or like our own personal intelligences,
Hmm.
but we don't want that inevitability to show up, and so we hide it away from ourselves. And a
Yeah.
lot of that, and through that, once the heartbreak really does happen and that inevitability truly does come to pass, like we knew it would, our kids are growing up, they don't need us anymore. They probably don't need us to function as humans anymore. um, they can feed and bathe and do all that themselves, like,
Hmm.
in many regards, you could say that you switch your parenting style from like, okay, now you can take care of yourself as a human, and then you can help teach them how to like take care of yourself as a human mentally. Like that's a
Yeah.
way that you could hold on a little bit longer so that you don't have that feeling of heartbreak. But and thinking of it like that is not hiding things of the inevitability. Is, a lot of people say like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And this might sound crude but or crass, but it didn't. You just weren't paying attention.
Yeah. I think the instances where things actually came out of nowhere
Mm-hmm.
are probably a lot more rare. Like there's
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
instances of like somebody's a really safe driver, right? They're
right.
really aware of their surroundings. They've never actually like caused a car accident or been in a car accident, and
Mm-hmm.
they get T-boned by another vehicle.
Yeah,
Right. There are instances like that, but overall I would say those are probably fairly rare,
rare. Yeah.
right? I would say a lot of the time, at least looking back through my own past relationships, like I could sense there were shifts happening in that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and I would deny it in my own system, right? There
Yeah, yeah,
there was
same.
something
Yeah,
in my system that noticed it though.
but I
Um,
didn't want to notice it.
yeah, I would say for the
That's
most
nothing.
part, if people are having things come up medically, like there have
Mm-hmm.
probably been smaller signs showing up in their body or smaller things in the actions they're taking that would indicate, like, no, there's something going on here that
Mm-hmm.
needs addressing that
Mm-hmm.
they just ignored, dismissed, bypassed, And it doesn't get into the point where it's an emergency that they
Yeah.
actually look at it.
Yeah. And then it is turned into a cancer.
Now it's turned into cancer. Now it's turned into they had a heart attack,
Yeah.
right? Now it is turned into something that feels very big and shocking and surprising.
And gut
But
wrenching and unable to
if
bear. Yeah.
but if you actually look back and notice those nuanced patterns and how the shifts happened,
Hmm.
probably wasn't actually all that surprising that
Yeah.
that showed up.
And
And
that's a
that's
hard pill to swallow for
it
some.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm not trying to blame
Oh, no,
anyone
no. Of
who
course not.
has
Yeah.
those instances come up. I have to say, like on a bigger level, that that sort of dissociation, that sort of lack of awareness of actually giving ourselves that care and notice at the more nuanced levels
Hmm.
is what comes into play,
Yeah.
right? And that comes up with giving ourselves the space to heal and rest, right? I remember
Hmm.
being really grateful for COVID. Like I know that's a controversial statement all on its own, but because I had already been seeing this pattern of like people would be at work, right, doing their job, their career, whatever it may be, and they'd be sick as a dog. And it wasn't until it hits some more critical phase
Yeah.
that they're like, oh, now I'll go home because I'm sick. Because they're making me go home and they're running a fever, they're puking, like whatever it is, but they're still trying to work their job versus giving themselves self care, where like, and the pattern I noticed in myself with this was there would be like a day that I would notice I wasn't feeling great, right?
Hmm.
And I would notice when I gave myself that day and called it on that day and was like, I'm not going into work, I'd get sick. I'd be sick for like 2, 3 days, maybe. When I didn't call it on that day, literally pushed it for just that one more day, I'd be down and out on an average of 8 days.
Yeah.
And it was my system was telling me, I just was refusing to listen and had it modeled and conditioned and very normalized
Hmm.
to not pay attention to those things, to not listen to my
Yeah.
system. And that's where I appreciated COVID, because even the littlest like bit of a sniffle, they're like, nope, go home. And I'm like, oh, they're giving people the space to self-care. This is amazing, right? They're giving
Yeah.
people 14 days. Like I know that wrecked so many people because they
There
didn't
wasn't
have
pay
the
for it.
support,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time to like start giving more of that allowance, like, oh no, you feel like something coming up in your body at this lower state, it's okay.
Hmm. Well, that makes me think, like, kind of tying it back into heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the shame or the guilt that, like, or stigma,
Yeah.
um, like what was coming up for me is like people won't believe me if I take one day off and then the next day I'm all better. I
Mm-hmm.
faked it. They're not going to believe me. When in reality, like that one day was the make or break day. And so now I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking in my head, like, all the instances of like, I took those days. Like, I gave myself a certain number of days to heal whatever it is that I needed to heal in my heartbreak and my sickness and whatever it was. And then I went back out to do it. And the stigma that I got was that I never cared. That
Yeah.
like I was unfeeling, that like I never, there was no love there, I was faking it. Um, and so that breeds a lot of shame within ourselves, and we question whether or not like, what is the norm? Should we work ourselves to death so that we're
Mm-hmm.
sick all the time? just so that they can bear witness to my runny nose
Yeah.
or my heartbreak, like my tears and my like I'm not okays, and which is not necessary.
Yeah.
It's not, but the shame that comes with, you know, basically people hating because they you know, like I didn't see it, so that means it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's
Uh,
where there's a lot of diseases that happen in the body, right?
mm-hmm.
Where like you don't have a physical wound
Yeah,
on you, right?
yeah,
And it's like, well, it's like fibromyalgia. That's a
yeah,
big
yeah.
one. It mainly impacts female populations, but male populations do have it as well. Um, but it is that constant like feeling of pain
Yeah.
under your skin, right? It's this like over tightening in the myofascial layers around the muscle, around the organs. Like your fascial layers run through everything in your
Mm-hmm.
body. And people can't see that. They can see the distress that somebody might put on their face, right? But besides that, like they can't see a burn, a scar, a cut, a bruise, whatever it may be. And so
Right.
there ends up being this shame around it. And people like, I mean, I used to have times where I'd get sick, and my ex-husband, like, I remember like years later, like, because I'd take like a day or two off work and then go back to work because I had noticed that pattern. If I waited out longer, I was going to be down for over a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And years after we split up, he's like, well, what about all those times you played hooky from work? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, when you'd stay home sick. And I was like, because I was sick and I was home resting because I was sick. Like, he had thought that I was just playing hooky because I didn't want to go to work. And but it was funny because I was just like, oh, like, okay, well, I see where you were coming from with your work ethic, but that wasn't mine, and that's okay.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with a ex of mine as well. He was also one of those people who if he genuinely didn't see it, then it
Hmm.
didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
That was the mentality that he had. And so I clearly was a hypochondriac.
Hmm.
Yeah, you know, like no, I shouldn't stay home from work because, you know, I'm not actually sick. I can still go.
Yeah.
Um, it irked me. It was just like, no, like I'm actually sick. Like I'm not going.
Hmm.
But there's, I think that can muddy up the not only healing process of heartbreak, but
Yeah.
also like the lessons that you can learn, like, you know, ones that are healthy for you and your unique self that will serve you. Like it is difficult when outside forces come into play and breed this shame or guilt that may not have been there
Hmm.
had they just kept their mouths shut.
Well, and I think it's one of those really valuable spaces, like in talking about all these things that come up that you can't see that are really painful
Mm-hmm.
for another person, is you, like, as an outside observer, like, you are not in that person's body, their experience, whatever it is, right? So the only way you can have any minute idea of the knowledge is to actually sit down and listen to what they have to say about their experience. I'm going to tell anyone listening right now, nobody can tell you or anybody else what their experience was. That was
Yeah,
one of my really big learning pieces I had to move through for myself, was because I would have an experience, I would have pain, and it was that oh, suck it up, it's not that bad, get over it, move past it, he wasn't worth it, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, that told me like I wasn't allowed to have my experience. It wasn't safe to have my experience. And like I get these other people, like they weren't wanting to see me hurt, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
probably weren't comfortable dealing with that sort of like pain in their own systems, let alone seeing somebody they care about go through it.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make it okay to tell somebody they shouldn't be feeling something.
Yeah. That reminds me of, in my case, it wasn't that people were telling me I shouldn't feel a certain
Mm-hmm.
way. It was the repetitiveness and profusities of people just saying, it will be okay, you'll be fine,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get over it.
Yeah.
And that kind of making that heartbreak and that heartache, that pain worse in the moment because I know that it'll be fine, but right now it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to feel that. I want to experience that. I want to learn what I need to learn from that right now.
Well, it's
And
I
being told that by another person is basically them being like, oh, like there's no lesson to be learned. You'll just get over it.
and sorry, that just it flashed me back actually to the last breakup I went through. Because I remember like he he broke up with me. It was this very like long whole evening process, which was very confusing in my system. Um, but in that he actually like he stayed there like while I cried and stuff like that. And at some
Mm-hmm.
point I had a very big wave of like sadness and that heartbreak feeling come over. Like it felt like my heart was getting ripped out of my chest.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of really ugly narratives I had about myself that were getting brought to the surface at that point in time.
Uh,
But he looked at me and he's like, I think he asked if I was okay. And I looked at him and like I said it with definitely like I cannot even replicate the tone of voice it came out in, but it was just kind of it reminded me of like a witch talking when I think
oh,
of um like archetypes, but I'm thinking very like Disney version witch
yeah,
or the
yeah.
like social version, not other versions that I know of witches. But it was just like, of course I'll be fine. I'm always fine. Right. I was like, but that's
Yeah.
part of the problem.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. And I can hear the voice that you're talking about because it's like, yes. It's like, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah, but it was just a space of like, but this it hurts. Like it hurt and that was okay. Like it was a
Mm-hmm.
space I needed to move through. There was definitely unhealthy attachments for me in that connection. Um, I mean, I still miss that relationship at times because he was my best friend on so many levels. On many
Mm-hmm.
other levels, like parts of me are like, no, he didn't treat you like a friend either. Because
Yeah.
the people you have that are your friends, they're they're not going to lie or try to get you to lie, like those sorts of things, right? They're going
Mm-hmm.
to accept and love you as being yourself. So for me, my foundation and key point of any romantic relationship I have, my standard to moving into any play space with a sexually romantic partner is there has to be a solid core of friendship there.
Yeah.
And like I have to see that built over time before I consider anything else.
Yeah. My goodness, I just had something that I was going to say and it completely escaped my
Oh,
brain.
I'm sorry.
No, so that's why I paused so long. I was like, wait, what was it? It's gone now.
Oh, that happens. It
But
might come back.
oh, I mean, I think like that is like the biggest power that comes with heartbreak, that I think is the hardest and scariest part to deal with,
Hmm.
is not listening to all the people telling you it'll be okay, you'll be fine, because we know we will be, but we also know that right now we need to feel this.
Yeah.
And honoring that, like, it's okay to feel like shit sometimes. And if you just allow yourself to feel it, you're going to
Hmm.
learn so much about yourself, about, whether or not it was actually something that you should be grieving over. I've found myself allowing myself to feel, and then in these cases was romantic relationships.
Hmm.
And after, letting myself feel and remember and write up stuff to help me with my feelings, I was like, this is not worth the energy that I'm putting into it right now. To
Yeah.
like, this is enough feeling that I can put into this, and I need to stop now, and I need to move on, and this person needs to be completely like discarded from my life,
Yeah.
and that's okay too. But had I not taken that time to like feel it and learn the lessons, I never would have been able to let that person go.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, I think, that the teacher of heartbreak can really give for you.
Yes.
But it's also the scariest and hardest one of all.
Well, and that's it. It just reminded me of, it was a few months ago. I sat down with a friend when I went to visit down in the Albany area again recently, and she's going through a divorce, and it was the very initial phases of separation. Uh, they were still in the process of getting all their things out of the shared home they had, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, I just sat there and like was like, okay, like what's coming up for you? There was one point they just sobbed and cried for 10 minutes or so, and I just held them and let them cry, and they went through the whole phase of like apologizing for crying on me. I'm like, you don't ever have to apologize for crying on me. That's not a
Yeah.
thing in my world anymore. Um, but she kept coming back to this focus of the loss, which is so normal at that point. And I told her, I was like, it's okay. Like, please, like, allow yourself to feel whatever needs to come up with these feelings of loss. But know on the other end of this, there's also the really good possibility that where this feels like something being taken away from you, you are actually being given like one of
Yeah.
the biggest gifts in the world. And that's, she is this woman who gives so much of herself, right? She's constantly focused on her kids, her partner, um, running a business, all these things, and making sure she's doing everything for everyone else, not not giving hardly any spaces of self-care in that, and
Mm-hmm.
self-love. And I was like, look, like the way your romantic relationship had unfolded, it had become this space where you had to caretake him, or you felt you really, really, really had to take on that role. Completely normal for the big life change you guys had gone through. But
Mm-hmm.
you, like, what I keep hearing over and over and over again is how much you've lost yourself even more in that space. So, yes, like, you're grieve, 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 all you need to. But no, there is some other really big gifts in you actually getting some time and capacity to fall back in love with you
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of that, where all that focus was being placed so outside of herself.
It's often viewed as a loss, that we forget what we gain
Mm-hmm.
through letting go.
Yeah.
It's like the sandbags in a hot air balloon. You're not going to fly off into the universe if you don't cut the sandbags off.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a loss, and it is painful, and it is also necessary.
Yeah. I also
And
think there's, oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, it's fine.
Oh, I just wanted to say, because I don't, I don't think we give ourselves the acknowledgement either
Yeah,
around the heartbreak associated with the loss of ourself in
yeah,
relationships. And I am sure that men end up doing it as well. I I know from my personal experience, there's a lot placed on women on that caretaking role,
mm-hmm.
whether that is evolutionary, societally, generationally, whatever it is, right? Um, but to where there are those stronger feelings of loss of self, you're
Mm-hmm.
saying yes to things that you wouldn't normally say yes to because it's something your partner wants.
Yeah,
You're not giving your no. But in that, like, there's a grief and there's a loss associated with that. And honestly, I think I noticed it during that last breakup I had, where not only was I feeling that heartbreak about the relationship with him,
mm-hmm.
it was also me finally getting to feel the sadness and heartbreak of how much I had abandoned myself in that relationship. So there can be that dual layering where it's like, oh, okay, now I'm getting the heartbreak's getting the space to come up and speak, right?
Yeah,
And you're not only getting to confront those feelings, it can also be, and here's what we lost in ourselves. Also, beautiful spot of like, oh, I can reclaim these things because they were always mine and always have been.
yeah. I mean, that's a reclaiming of power that is
Yes,
so important after loss and heartbreak.
yes,
Well,
yes, yes,
often
yes.
forgotten about. Is once we let go, we have to find something that'll ground us, or we're just going to float off into the ether. So we
Mm-hmm.
need to have our wings or our power, whatever it is that helps us fly on our own, get control that no one else can give to us and no one else
Yeah.
can really take away.
So
But we
I'm
believe,
curious. Oh, good.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say that we believe are those sandbags,
Yeah.
and that we've given other people that power. And so a lot of that is cutting the sandbags and letting them go to learn that we never needed them in the first place to reclaim ourselves and our power.
So I'm curious because you've said that you have a lot of this coming up with your current clients, right? And then obviously that was also coming up in your own coaching session. Do
Mm-hmm.
you have any recommendations for people who are currently going through heartbreak as far as resources, things they can bring focus to?
Yeah, I mean, biggest one would be self-care of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
One specifically that you allow yourself to feel. Like mine is taking baths.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, I'll bring what I need into the bath with me and I will just allow myself to feel everything
Yeah.
that I'm feeling. And then, if I need to cry or breathe or meditate, whatever it is that I need to do for myself, I allow in that
Mm-hmm.
moment. And I give myself a cutoff period of, however long I want to spend in the bath. And then after that, journaling, specifically not about how you're feeling, But like if you're like having heartbreak over like the loss of a relationship, writing out all of the things that like you liked and disliked about the relationship. Like how was
Well,
it truly serving you?
yeah.
And um oh, I had one more thing I wanted to say. Um yeah, it's not coming back to me. Not like doing any of this in a form of dwelling.
Hmm.
Um remembering and reiterating to yourself that that everything happens for a reason, and what isn't meant for you will leave, or you
Yeah.
know, like it better way to put it would be like it'll move out of your way.
Yeah. There's a gift in it,
Exactly.
right?
And reminding yourself of that while still allowing yourself to feel, and
Hmm.
reminding yourself in the journaling process helps you remind yourself that what was real and what was a fantasy.
Yeah.
So we paint these pictures of these people once they leave our lives as if they're some sort of god saint,
Hmm.
because we feel that loss, that home, that piece of us that we put in them that was taken.
Yeah.
And so we forget that that's not the reality, that we forget the times that maybe we weren't happy in the relationship, and that
Yeah.
could have actually been something that happened a lot more often than you realized, or not. It depends. But if you write it out and recap it, it helps you have a real understanding of what was going on and how to proceed
Yeah.
next.
Well, and I think that that brings me back to the end of that last relationship that I had had. Like, you even got to hear me talk about how, like, yeah, like I miss him still because he was my best friend. But I also realized, like, at the same time, like, a part of me considered him my best friend. There were so many
Mm-hmm.
ways he didn't treat me, even as a friend,
Yeah.
right? And so there can be that duality that shows up, but being honest with yourself, like if you find yourself just romanticizing and like, oh, they were so perfect, like no one's perfect, we're human,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, give
Yeah.
yourself the pros and cons. Also, don't just focus on the negative because that's creating an illusion too. Like, there may be
Yes.
times
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
that is serving, right? Because there's probably a part in your system that's scared of you going back to that
Yeah.
relationship, right? But like, recognize there was bad, but that like you had a relationship with this person because there was good qualities too. It's finding that balance over time, and that may go back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, you know, balance between not glorifying them as some god saint, but also not
Hmm.
villainizing them either.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
important.
I think one of the important steps, and it may be like a little bit further off than like the very initial instance of
Mm-hmm.
this all happening, but there can be that very strong sense of this thing happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's getting to recognize what your roles in that actually were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that moving forward, you can set different standards, you can have healthier boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like whatever those things are that a person needs, so that you bring back your own empowerment and ownership, and we're not placing all this need or all this purpose into that person, place, thing
Yeah.
outside of us having to be that fulfillment, because that's each and every one of us is capable as adults, at least, of fulfilling those needs. Like there's value in community, there's value in interpersonal relationships, there's value in having a home and a place as well, but ultimately like that needs to be in you first
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
that sovereignty.
Yeah. I think RuPaul said it is, can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anyone else?
Yeah. And I do think it's possible. Like that's one of those sayings where like I've had the duality debates in my head
Oh,
about it.
totally. Yeah, I could see that.
Cause because like I have totally been immensely loving to things outside myself when I did not love myself,
Yeah.
right? When I
Yeah.
was not loving to myself, I think the stronger thing there is like if you can see that you can love somebody outside of yourself, even if you don't feel like you love yourself, it's noticing the reflection that person is of you.
Yeah.
That they're acting as some sort of mirror, and in that like what they're displaying is something you have in you that like when you're showing up as like your most loving self to you, like you love and appreciate those things in yourself as well.
Hmm.
And being able to use that outside world as that mirror can be helpful in those ways.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely.
Yeah. Kind of like noticing that like my that first dog who passed away, like he was my protector. He was one of those first spaces outside of me
Hmm.
that like I felt safe to cry,
Yeah.
right? And like I said, I didn't even feel safe to cry in myself at that point in time.
Hmm.
And so like being able to see that like I could get that nurture, right? I get to see that that was something I was needing in my system and wasn't giving myself. And so I get to take away that valuable piece and say, okay, well, like, how do I receive this? Like, is that
Yeah.
in being held? There's this really cool technique. I think it's, I don't think it's directly based on EMDR. I can't remember the exact methodology it's associated with, but it's called a butterfly hug.
Oh.
And it's literally you link both your thumbs across your chest and like have your wrists crossed and then lay your hands on your chest and then you just slowly breathe and alternately tap your fingers. The thing about your human body is it does not realize when physical touch is coming from someone else or yourself.
Interesting.
And so that is a way you can literally bring holding to yourself and this hug and soothing. You can, I mean,
Hmm.
you can do the same even by grabbing your alternate shoulders. So right hand on left shoulder, left hand on right shoulder, and just rhythmically squeeze, alternate
Hmm.
tapping your hands, right? And that the the alternate tapping creates that kind of like EMDR space where you're bringing notice to the right and left hemisphere of the body.
Yeah.
Um, and that helps a lot with processing of emotions and bringing the body back to a regulated state.
It's nuts how the body works, especially when it comes to touch sensories.
Hmm. Well, it goes the same for voice. So, like, if you're going through like self-love practices, and it's one of my favorite practices, right? It's where you stand in front of a mirror. I did this practice for years where I would just think the thoughts in my head that were self-love. I would find something, one little thing, that I loved about my body, right? It could
Mm-hmm.
literally be a freckle. And I would say that in my head. And like I would consciously do this every time I looked in the mirror. And it helped so much with the body dysmorphia I had carried in my body my entire
Oh,
life, right?
yeah. Yeah.
A couple of years later, I decided to do a 21-day challenge on my social media accounts where I was posting a picture along with whatever it was I was celebrating about my body.
Mm-hmm.
My extra challenge on that for me was now I was also speaking it out loud to myself. And it was really phenomenal to notice the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually broke down crying a few of the times because now, like, if you think about physiologically, if you're only thinking something in your head, like, it mainly stays in your head, right? If you think about it as energy, right, that energy is still mainly held in your head. You might feel like little tendrils reaching out to the rest of your body.
Mm-hmm.
When you're speaking it out loud, like now that vibration has released into the air and space around you, your ears are actually hearing it. So now it's getting processed through another neurological loop. And when you talk, that vibration resonates through the cells in your body at a different frequency. So, once again, your physical body doesn't know the difference between somebody's outside voice and yours.
Yeah,
Like it
that's so
may be more
interesting.
used to that frequency, right? But it still carries an impact
Mm-hmm.
on your system. And one of my favorite things in the whole wide world, I still want to take you there someday, is the one of the cave journeys I did. And it was sitting in the bottom of this cave, and this was a guided one with another woman who joined me. And I led us both through a very like calm breathwork session. But in that, at the end, we were closing out, and it had been pitch black for the probably 10-15 minutes we were sitting in the breathwork, and I was guiding us through this space. As we both turned on our flashlights, like the beams of light went up, but there's this mist in the cave because it's about 40 degrees year round in
Mm-hmm.
that space. And so every word you spoke, you could see it move out of your mouth like smoke through the flashlight beam. So, like at the end of this practice, we ended up speaking out what our desires were to pull into our life, to call into our life over the next year. So now the interesting thing was, okay, in this cave space, you're you're not only getting to hear it out loud, you're getting to hear it bounce off the walls, right?
Oh,
It's like it's literally going out into the earth around you as well. But then when you have the flashlight beam involved and this mist that hangs out in that space, you're getting to physically see the like manifestation of the words coming out of your mouth in that moment as well.
yeah.
And I remember being like, this is the coolest thing. And we like sat there and talked about even that aspect of manifestation and being willing to speak things out loud
Yeah.
and how
That sounds
powerful
so
that is.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but
I-
in that it impacts your body in a different way. And like it's really simple to do either one of those practices. And it's like do the one where you just think it in your head for a while and
Mm-hmm.
then try adding in speaking whatever that thing is out loud and see the difference, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also test out the different methodologies.
Mm-hmm.
Find what one works best for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest recommendation is like if you try something the first time, um, especially if you haven't been a risk taker,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, that you normally do things that you're very comfortable with. The first time you're doing a lot of new practices, even if they're really simple, it can feel really uncomfortable to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And in that, like, be willing to try exploring and playing with it. And so maybe it feels uncomfortable the first time, or like you have the voice going in the back of your head that's like, well, this was stupid. It didn't do anything, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. Which happens a lot.
Yes, it happens
This
a
happens
lot.
far more often than people realize.
Yes. But
When we first doing things, we're just like, I feel like a doofus.
yeah, the point is try it again. Like do
Yeah.
it a couple times if you can. Like if it's an hour long practice and you do it the first time and you're like sitting there at the end and you're like, I hated that. That was awful. Like I didn't like it. Like
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you'll take the space to realize like what you didn't like about it, right? But you realize that tool like didn't work for you,
Yeah.
right? That was a big investment of time. If it's something that's like a 5 minute practice or a 1 minute practice and it felt uncomfortable the first time, like, cool, it really wasn't that big of an investment for you to
Mm-hmm.
feel uncomfortable for a few minutes. Like, maybe try it again a couple times to see if there is a difference. If
Yeah.
it still feels super uncomfortable and you're like, I don't like this, I don't get any benefit out of it, maybe it's not the right tool for you right now. And that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I
Hmm.
do hate to cut it short, but I do
Nope,
need to
no
get
worries then.
going now.
Nope, and you're
But
not cutting it short. You're actually this is the
we're,
longest one we've done so far. So,
yeah. Well, I
all
thought it
right.
went great, and I will talk to you next Thursday at
Yes.
1 p.m. for
Yep,
our
Thursday.
next one. I don't think that we have picked what we're going to talk about yet, but we will.
No, not yet. And just as a heads up for anybody listening in, um, These these will all be published on YouTube with subtitles each week. As soon as I am able to get them up and going at the Sexient Beings channel. You're
Mm-hmm.
also welcome to join the live calls, usually Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every once in a while that will change, but you can check out our social media accounts. And usually, at least on my accounts, I know every time before we're having a call, I'll try to announce it on there with whatever the weekly topic is.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant.
So,
So
yeah.
we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Have a great one, Rachel. And
All
goodbye,
right.
everyone.
Thanks for having me. Bye.